All right, guys, if you're still with me, I'm not sure how, but that means you're still scratching and surviving. All right, guys, it has been a rough season. No real great teams, and that is what's mixing up the survivor pools and shaking things out. So hopefully, if you're watching this, you guys are still alive in your pool. Myself got knocked out in the one pool that I was in, that small pool. It was me heads up against someone else. And it was one of those situations where I advised you guys last week. I took my own advice, took Vegas on that late game, the 4 o'clock game. And of course, we get the quarterback change for Indianapolis. That changed things. I knew we were in trouble right then and there once the Colts announced that they were going to be starting Matt Ryan. I could have, of course, taken the Giants. Most people in most pools were on the Giants, so Vegas was a good leverage play in a lot of pools, especially if you were still in a pool with quite a few people left in that pool. In a heads-up pool, as I always advise you guys, you want to take the best team. Now, by about a half a point, I believe it was 5 points. If you went right at 12:30, right before the game started, we were looking at the Giants at about a 5-point favorite. The Vegas was about 4.5 points. So usually I'd want to take the Giants in that situation, but because it was the late game, it gave me the opportunity to hedge, which I did. So I was able to hedge the week prior on that Kansas City game against Tennessee, won that hedge bet, and then won my hedge bet this week with the Colts. So I didn't win the entire pool, but I still was able to win about half of what the pool was worth. On those two bets combined, I get about $1,000 back. The pool was worth about $2,400, $2,500. So not ideal. But again, we're hedging, and there's a good chance those hedges would have lost, and in which case I would have dropped the amount I was going to win in the pool anyway. So I'm happy taking down the 1,000. Of course, the longer you could go, ideally you get those situations like I had the week prior where Kansas City, I'm taking Tennessee plus the points. The game winds up being close. Kansas City wins. I advance and win my bet. Those are ideal. But, of course, not always going to happen that way. We had the chance with Vegas. They had a chance to win that game late. They would not have covered, and I would have been able to continue and stay in the pool. Now, hopefully you guys who were in similar situations to me did the same thing, and you were able to take away a few bucks. That's what it's all about. We're trying to, every year, just make money. It's great if we can win these pools, but if we can make some money along the way, we're always trying to put ourselves in that advantageous position. That's why I talk about equity, building the equity in the pool. The more equity you have, the greater chance you have of pulling some of that equity out and hedging your bet. So if you are still alive, we're going to go over what we were looking at this week. And again, you got to start thinking about hedging as we get down in these pools down to fewer and fewer people. The fewer people, the higher your equity is, of course, in the pool. And then, of course, you want to start looking at maybe just the teams that you have left. If you somehow have some of the better teams left and your opponents don't, increase your equity. You've got a little bit more equity. It's hard to really quantify it, but there are ways to do it. I do it myself, but nothing's going to be absolutely perfect. But understand, if the pool is worth $10,000, there's 5 people left in the pool, you've generally got about $2,000 in equity. But if you feel like you have the advantage in teams that you can take, maybe you just want to bump that up $2,200, $2,400, $2,500, something like that. And then you could use your hedging strategy based off of what you feel like your equity is in the pool. The more equity you have, the higher or the greater the hedge bet is going to be typically. Okay, so, and I like to do these hedges. Some of you have asked me, I like to do the hedge against the point spread, because when you do it against the money line, that's it. It's win or lose. When I do it against the spread, I have the ability to catch a middle, and that means I can win my bet and I can win in the pool as well and survive and advance. So that gives you an option to actually win more money than is actually in the pool. By doing that, you have that ability if you can continue to survive and win the bet by getting these games tight. So with that said, let's jump into this week. We'll see what we got going on Survivor Grid. All right, so as you can see here on the Survivor Grid, I've already got this laid out for my one pool that I am still alive in, which is double picks from here on out. I think we're down to about, I don't know, 130 some odd people. I haven't looked at it, but I think we're in the 130s, 140s, something like that. I've got one left. We started with 8,000. Like I said, it's double picks from here on out. That pool I was able to advance. I had the Giants and who was the big one last week was San Francisco. So I had San Francisco and the Giants last week and was able to survive. Of course, it's just never easy at this point, but this is kind of what I'm looking at in my pool. So I've got Baltimore left, as do a lot of people, and that's reflected in the 41.5% of pool participants are on Baltimore right now. You're going to see that in your pool as well. If you're in a small pool, down to a couple of people, everyone can take Baltimore. You should probably just take Baltimore, kind of take that. Nothing is free, but we'll take the free pass. Let someone else kind of take a chance here, because when we look at it, I've got this sorted by how the teams are ranked in with the point spread. Big advantage. We've seen these double-digit favorites go down, but you can't get yourself caught up in that. Baltimore should win the game, obviously. If they lose, they lose. You chalk it up to just bad luck, and it just wasn't meant to be. But you have a good chance where if you're in a small enough pool, everyone's going to have Baltimore. And then if you're in a pool where they continue the pool after, if everyone loses and they continue the pool, which was the case in the one that I was still in, you'll advance. And if not, then you guys would all chop. So not the worst scenario if everyone's on Baltimore. It's just a situation to me where you've got such a disparity between the top team and any of the other potential teams you could take. I mean, in my case, I can't take any of these teams. I don't know your particular pool. Now, I have to take 2 picks this week, so I'm struggling. Obviously, Baltimore is going to be one of those picks, and then I'm going to have to see where the point spread goes here. We've got a lot of 3-point favorites. Those games are, close to toss-ups. You see it's about 60% win percentage on those games where they're about 3-point spreads. We'll see how it goes as the week plays out. You get things like that, the Matt Ryan news, you get an injury that you weren't expecting, and these lines can change. So as of Wednesday, I'm probably going to be on Washington. When you look at it, I'm not as concerned with future value. I am to a degree. So if I see a team here, we can just analyze it now quick. Washington is probably the team I'm going to take. Now, I could take them the following week, and now I need 2 picks in the following week. Would that be a play? You know what? Potentially, I would have to take Washington here. I could be taking the Jets, Tampa. I might want to save Washington. I'm going to have to look at that, right? So Miami would be an obvious play. I don't have Miami yet. That's going to be an obvious play. A lot of you probably have not picked Miami in your pools. If you just have one pick to make, you're probably going to be on Miami. Most people that's the line that they're going to be taking from this point on. You're going to be on Baltimore this week, then you're going to have Miami the following week. Let's see what week 13 looks like. So it's interesting here because as of now, Baltimore and Minnesota, the 2 top teams. I've taken Minnesota. Now, if you have Minnesota available, you have less of a decision here, but it could be a situation. You got to look at it, and again, it gets more and more complicated as we get deeper into this for me to talk about this in a macro sense. So that's why I like when you guys comment and ask me questions. We could look at it together and see what the best path is to take. But what I want to look at is not only what's my potential for taking that team in the future, but what's the opportunity cost. So let's just take an example. Let's say I had the ability to take Baltimore, and I was in a pool where it was just we were just taking one team for the rest of the way, right? So let's clear this. And we'll just assume here that you have Baltimore left and San Francisco, and you're not sure which one of these teams to take. Now, a couple of factors are going to have to factor in here as to where you're going to go. One is, obviously, who's got the better chance to win this week? How many people are left? Now, I'm really talking about pools where you've got, you've got some time to go before the pools hit. When you're down to just a few people left in a pool, as I said, pretty much stick to the chalkiest pick and let the other people try and get tricky with their picks, and then try to hedge as much as you can along the way. If you're going to do that, you're going to want to bet Carolina plus the 13. But let's say we're in a pool. We've still got 40, 50 people left, let's say, in a pool. We've got one entry. Let's just say we're looking between Baltimore and San Francisco. You can see we've got a 5.5-point differential between these two this week. So you've got to look at what my opportunity cost is, right? So if I go San Francisco here, I'm giving up 4.5 points, let's say, of value. Does it do anything for me in the future? Now, it does something as far as leverage, because I'm getting leverage here against Baltimore, where the majority, if I've got 40 people, that means we're looking at something like 16 to 20 people will probably be on Baltimore, which means, of course, if they were to lose and I was to win my San Francisco game, that gives me a huge advantage and puts me in a much better position to possibly win the pool. But the probability of that happening is less than just taking Baltimore to win. My chances of surviving, let's say, are less here by about 9%. But I'd have to look into the future and see. And of course, this is going to be based on teams. Let's say you've taken Kansas City. Now, I'm going to go on the assumption you probably haven't taken Miami. So in this week, you'd have Miami. You wouldn't need San Francisco or Baltimore come week 12. Let's just see week 13. And there you go. You've got Baltimore as the top team. Now, if you passed on them in this week, and let's say you've taken Minnesota, you've taken Philly, you've taken Dallas, you've got Tampa, Buffalo, right? So you might be in a situation here where now the majority of the pool has probably taken Baltimore if you get to this week 13 point, and you can be in a situation where now you've got a big advantage over the pool. It's hard to quantify. It's hard to look. I don't like to look too far out into the future, but you could get yourself in a situation. You're going to have to look at your particular pool and analyze it again. Leave me a comment, and I'll help you guys out if you like. You'd have to look how many people have Minnesota, how many have Philly, Dallas, Tampa. Is it worth me saving the almost lock pick in Baltimore just so I could have them in week 13? More often than not, I'm going to tell you it's probably not worth it. We'll try to play the game and let others get tricky with it. But more often than not, it's not going to be worth it. When we look at week 14, if you haven't had Dallas yet, of course, that's going to be a great play. Buffalo, more than likely, you could potentially have Buffalo left. Now, in this week, we're seeing, let's just take a look at Buffalo because they're the number 2 choice on the board, right? So do we want to take Buffalo if we have them available? If we had all 3 of these teams available, I think San Francisco is probably going to be your best option, right? We'd probably want to hold off on Buffalo. Now, your best option is obviously Baltimore, and if you're in a large enough pool, then the larger the pool, the more I'd lean towards San Francisco. The smaller the pool, I'd lean towards Baltimore here. Remember, guys, even if you've got 50 people left and you started with 5,000, you're still only a 2% chance to win that pool. You've still got a very small chance to win. So I'm okay with taking some risks, but we've got to talk it through and see just who are left, who your opponents have left. And when we have 50 people in a pool, hopefully you're in one of those, you're on a site where it'll give you how many people have each team left, and we can judge from there. But as you can see on Survivor Grid, the fact that 17% of people will be taking Buffalo means that there's still a significant amount of people with Buffalo out there. Obviously, anyone who took Buffalo last week are gone. And there's been a couple of occasions where Buffalo knocked people out with the Jets. Anytime Buffalo loses, they're pretty much going to be knocking people out. As you can see, they're just a big favorite from here on out the rest of the season, as we've known. So there's a lot of factors here this week. These are your biggest teams, obviously Baltimore, Buffalo, and then we're looking at the Washington, New England, Cincinnati. Why these teams become big is because they're available, right? Not necessarily because they're best plays. People aren't typically taking these 3 and 4 point favorites, but they're available. And I'm, of course, in a situation where I'm going to have to take one of these because of double picks from here on out. So I'm not going to look at the spreadsheet today because the spreadsheet becomes a little bit more difficult to use. It's not going to give us much more information than Survivor Grid is going to. It gets tricky from this point out. Hopefully you guys are still alive and you'll be alive next week. Maybe you'll take the pool down. I think a lot of these pools in the next 3-4 weeks are going to be gone, especially my pool with 2 picks. And this looks like it's going to be a pretty difficult week. A lot of people will have Baltimore, but getting that second team right is going to be crucial. All right, guys, as always, I appreciate you watching. Appreciate you giving us the likes, the follows, the subscribes, all that good stuff. Share it with your buddies. I know a lot of them are out of their pools now. You might be in a pool where you got, you might have started in week 8 or 9. A lot of people like to do that after a lot of people are out of the original pool. So if that's the case, of course, continue to watch. We'll try to help you out with those. And good luck this week. I'll see you back here next week. Hopefully, you guys a little bit richer.